Book review on video. This time, The Woods by Harlan Coben. I read an audio version, Norwegian translation. The book was published in 2007 originally, and this is a Norwegian edition from 2009, read by the actor Kristoffer Staib. I den skogen. To start with the translation, I thought it was good. There were some obvious errors that you almost always get when translating from English to Norwegian, but overall I thought it was better than a lot of translations I've seen, except the title, which is really stupid because I den skogen, det ikke noe du ville sagt på norsk, det veldig unaturlig uttrykk sånn for seg selv. Og boka heter heller ikke In the Woods, den heter bare The Woods, så boka kunne jo på norsk like gjerne hett Skogen, men den heter også I den skogen, og det for meg tungt og kunstig uttrykk. Og det dukker jo opp noen ganger I boka hvor han sier at det var noe vi aldri kom over, det at søsteren min aldri kom ut av etter hendelsene I den skogen, og faren min reiste ut I den skogen, altså sånne ting. Men jeg synes at titlen virker veldig tung, den virker veldig konstruert. Jeg synes at å bare kalle den Skogen eller I skogen hadde vært en mye bedre titel. For nå virker det som de har oversatt In the Woods, og veldig merkelig titel som gjør at jeg fikk litt aversjon med boka før jeg helt hørt om den. But that bit of translation weirdness aside, the Norwegian title seems very constructed, not an expression that people would actually use in that kind of setting, but the translation itself is pretty good. It was read, like I said, by the actor Kristoffer Staib. He did a wonderful job. I mean, he, I think, is one of the best readers of a Norwegian audiobook that I've heard. He was wonderful, and I'm really glad that my that publisher, I don't think my library has it, but the publisher definitely has a search function where you can find other books by the same reader. So I can go to their site and find out who else, what other authors they've published with him as the reader in Norwegian, because I would really like to hear more audiobooks read by him. He was wonderful, and I recommend him as a reader. He was fantastic. The book itself, I thought his voice was really suited to read it also because it's a relatively young man. It's the narrator, a man who is the son of immigrants from the Soviet Union to America, but who's grown up almost his entire life as an American. He's a district attorney in his hometown now, and is a widower with a young daughter. And his life seems to be going pretty well, you know, apart from the whole wife dying thing. But in his past, he has a mystery, a criminal mystery, where his sister and some other young people were killed by what was supposedly a serial killer, later discovered to be a serial killer, during a summer camp. And it's never really been determined who killed his sister, although there is a guy who is in jail for the series of murders that this murder was a part of. He's never been convicted of that because there's not enough evidence. It's just an assumption that they're making that he's the one behind it, but he's not been convicted and no charges have been laid against him for that. But the big deal for our hero, Paul, and his family, such as it is, or such as it was, his father, that he was alone with his father for the last part of his growing up, and the father died like a couple of years, I think, or is it a few months, before the book starts. And what's been weighing on them is that his sister was never found. The body disappeared in the woods, and no one ever found it. And the killer refuses to say where he's buried it. And one other body was also, there were 4 kids who were killed, and only 2 of them were recovered. As the book begins, Paul is involved in a case where a young woman, a young black woman with a checkered past, she's a single parent at, I think she's about 16 or something, and she works as a stripper, and she's been raped by 2 white frat boys. And this case is difficult, and it gets more difficult, but Paul is really determined to find justice for this young woman, because he feels that if she had been a white sorority girl with, you know, a wealthy family, a decent upbringing, and a couple of black kids had raped her, then the situation would have been completely different from what he finds himself and his client in, or client, but the victim. He's the DA, so obviously he's representing the victim, the state. And he feels that it's very, it goes against the idea of justice, that something like that, the color of her skin, her background, and her personal situation, this is anything to do with the justice she should receive, because rape is rape. But he also at the beginning becomes involved in another case, which is that of a dead man without an identity. The police initially think they have his identity, but that turns out to be false. And Paul becomes convinced that this kid is in fact the other missing victim from his sister's murder case. And he starts digging into this, while, unbeknownst to him, others are digging into it too. And it becomes something that he kind of, he gets himself in kind of a mess, and dangerous things start happening. But he is absolutely determined to get to the bottom of it and find out what did actually happen to his sister. It's an engrossing story, mostly believable, I thought. Very American, with some great scenes, some great characters, and I really like the courtroom drama of the scenes with this rape victim and what he's doing to fight for her. I really like that. It was a bit too Hollywood at times. So not 100% believable all the time, but the story was really engrossing. I liked the characters, I liked the drama, and I really had a hard time putting it down. I wanted to keep reading and keep finding out what was happening. So it was definitely worth reading. It wasn't that deep or profound, but I didn't expect to. It's a thriller. My first book by Harlan Coben, and it lived up to the expectations. That it's a relatively lightweight thriller, but with a good plot, good pacing, and characters that interest you. And there was a twist at the end, which I didn't really see coming. I normally don't. That made the book just constantly interesting. I really enjoyed it. It was a really good read, I thought, for what it's worth, for its type of genre. And I definitely recommend it if you need some relatively light, but with also a lot of serious drama. Crime, mystery, not the typical hunting for a killer kind of thing. In the Woods, no, sorry, The Woods, skogen by Harlan Coben. For my money, worth reading. I will definitely be open to reading more of Coben in the future.